Words are not enough to tell you of our love, so listen to our hearts.
All right. Thank you, guys. Well, it is 11 o'clock on the last day of the new year, which means we roughly have, 13 hours till the new year? So many of you about this time last year were probably thinking to yourself, what am I going to do with the new year, moving into 2017? And many of you probably made resolutions. And I just want to give you a warning. You have 13 hours to lose that weight. You have 13 hours to learn a new language. You have 13 hours to read through the Bible. I don't know what your resolution was, but there's still time. All right? You still have a little bit of time left. So, I typically don't make resolutions. I don't know if you do, but I have noticed that most people do not keep the resolutions that they make on New Year's, right? And you know how I know this? Because I go to the gym every morning. And I hate this time of year because I know January, it's going to be really crowded, and I know about halfway through February, it's going to die back down, and it's going to be the regular folks that have been there last year. So all these people that start going to the gym, they usually fade out by the middle of February. But it's like that for most of us. We make a resolution going into the new year, and we don't always fulfill it. But I'm here to tell you, you have 13 hours to finish it before you make a new one for 2018. The title of today's message is Why I Am Optimistic. Like you really care, but why I'm optimistic, especially going into the new year. But really what I want to share with you is why you should be optimistic too, moving into the year 2018. When we get to this time of year, many of us are looking forward to 2018, looking forward to the new year. We might have said, well, maybe 2017 wasn't the greatest year, so I'm really looking forward to going into 2018 and making a better year out of it. Or some of us might have said, you know what, 2017 was great. I'm going to move into 2018, and it's going to be even greater. And some of us are like, I just want to survive another year. I just want to get through 2018. But, we really shouldn't think that way. We as Christians, as believers in Jesus Christ, we should really be optimistic moving into the future and moving into the new year. And so I want to give you one verse. Actually, it's 3 verses, but one short section of Scripture this morning of why we ought to be an optimistic people and what we ought to do in the new year and what our goals should be to live by in 2018, which will make it a good year for you. So Ephesians chapter 5, a very famous chapter in the Bible, and these verses kind of get tucked into some more famous verses in Ephesians chapter 5. But what I want to share with you is just directly out of this short passage of Scripture this morning, if you'd allow me to break it down a little bit further for us. It says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is." I'm going to pull 3 things out of this portion of Scripture that we ought to do in the new year that, especially if we would do these things, makes me optimistic and hopeful for the future. The first thing that we need to do moving into the new year is what it says at the very beginning. It says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise." My first point this morning is we need to watch our step. Watch our step. To be careful in the original language literally means to walk accurately or walk precisely. The King James Version uses the word circumspectly. circumspectly, if you have a King James version in front of you. It's the idea of you walking down a narrow path, maybe on the side of a mountain, and there's a cliff over the side, and the way you walk, you need to watch where your step is. You need to see where you're going, lest you look around and miss a step and you stumble and fall to your ultimate death. And what Paul is saying here is that we need to watch our step. We need to watch where we're going. We need to be intentional in the things that we do, not just wandering around, looking around, not paying attention to what's going on around us. My question for you this morning is, are you watching the road that you're walking on? Are you watching where you're going? Or are you just living life and not really paying attention? Are you mindful of the way that you're living? Are you living intentionally? Are you making intentional decisions? Are the things that you're doing moving you in the direction of God, or are you just kind of wandering around, not watching your step? And so he says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Being careful also means slowing down. And I know this is hard for some of us. It's hard for myself, too, to say this. But some of us, you got so many responsibilities, so many other things going on, that you just live too fast and you miss things. Does that make sense? You find yourself, you got so busy. Whoever said, man, where did the month of December go? Or where did 2017 go? I feel like it was just yesterday. You know, we get ourselves there because we've been living too fast, we've been moving too fast, and we've kind of missed the things that are around us. We make snap judgments, we make hasty decisions, we speak too fast, we move too fast, we react too fast, we answer questions before we actually hear the question being asked. Anybody ever do that? Some of us, we're just moving too fast, we're living too fast, and we need to slow down a little bit. I got to tell this to myself, too, because now that, we're almost in January, it's the new year, I'm already looking forward to the spring baseball season, right? And so this year, I get to coach my daughter's softball team. I get to umpire high school baseball. I get to go help out with my college and their baseball team. And on top of that, I got to worry about the family and the church. And so I can get so busy in the spring that I might be doing things so fast that I miss things. And some of you are even more busy than that. You have all sorts of different things going on. Sometimes, in order to walk carefully, to be careful then how you live, is we need to slow down and be intentional with our families, with our faith, and with our God, and with those around us. And so some of us, I just want to give you the word of, in 2018, you might just need to slow down a little bit. Make sense? So if we continue to hurry and hurry and hurry all the time, we will get tripped up and we will fall. And oftentimes when we're hurrying, I want to say this too. Oftentimes we get so busy, we get busy with good things. It's not like we're running after bad things, but we get so busy with good things that we let great things go. And so don't get too busy. Don't get too tied up. Make sure you are intentional in where you're going. Don't be too busy. Sometimes slowing down means we got to, this might sound funny, but sometimes we got to slow down and allow God to catch up to us because we ran out ahead of him. I've done this before too, right? With good intentions, we want to do, go, and all of a sudden we're going out ahead of God, and he's not really with us because we haven't consulted him on the decisions that we're making, and we're just moving ahead too fast. Sometimes we need to settle down and ask God, where do you want me to go? I need to slow down a little bit. In fact, in Psalm 46:10, it says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I'm God. We need to slow down, pay attention to where we're at, pay attention to where we're going, and ask God for the help in the decisions and in the moves that we make rather than running out ahead of him. Can I tell you, you'll get more accomplished by slowing down and being with God than you will by running out ahead of him. You'll get more done that way. I know it doesn't make sense on the surface, but it works. Trust me. So the first thing we need to do is we need to watch our step. The second thing we need to do is says, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. The King James renders this, redeem the time. Who's heard that phrase before? Redeem the time. The second thing we need to do is we need to redeem the time that we have, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Someone once observed that a wasted life is really no more than a collection of wasted hours, wasted days, wasted weeks, wasted months, and pretty soon you end up wasting your year, and pretty soon you end up wasting your life. You know, each and every one of us, as we move in to 2018, we each have the same number of opportunities. God is going to give each, if God tarries, He's going to give each of us 365 days. 365 opportunities to live for Him. Nobody else in here is going to get any more than you, and nobody in here is going to get any less than you. You're going to have the same number of opportunities to live for God, to shine a light in the world, to do good. You're going to have the same number of opportunities. You know, successful people usually aren't the most talented, but they're the people that do the most with what the time that they have. And so often we need to understand we're going to have 365 days in this new year to do the will of God. What are you going to do with the opportunities that God gives you? Charles Francis Adams, son of President John Quincy Adams and grandson of President John Adams, kept a diary. And one day he entered in his diary, "I went fishing with my son today. It was a wasted day." His son, Brooke Adams, also kept a diary, which still exists today. And on the same day, Brooke Adams wrote this entry: "I went fishing with my father. It was the most wonderful day of my life." The father thought he was wasting his time because he wasn't getting work done, because he was out fishing with his son, and yet his son thought it was the greatest day of his entire life. The only way to tell the difference between a wasting time and investing your time is knowing the ultimate purpose of your life. And so, to one, it was a wasted day, and to others, it was the greatest day in the world. How are you investing your time? How are you making the most of every opportunity? Listen, we're moving into the new year, 2018. You're each going to have opportunity. How are you going to do with that opportunity that God gives you? Are you going to make the most of it? It's interesting. The author here tells us not just to make the most of every opportunity because it's cool to make the most of every opportunity. He says, make the most of every opportunity. Why? Because the days are evil. Because the days are evil, make the most of every opportunity that you have. I just literally took me about 30 seconds to think of some things that could show you how our days are evil. Do you realize that just in the past week, the United States decided that we were going to move our embassy to Jerusalem and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel? And because we did that, there was a vote at the United Nations. And 128 countries voted to condemn the United States from moving their embassy to Jerusalem. And only 9 countries, including the United States and Israel, in those 9, the others were little island countries, or South American countries, voted for that resolution. And so we can see right now that the world is against Israel. 128 countries said, no, you can't recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And long story short, the reason why is because the world hates Israel. And the Bible tells us that that's going to happen. We live in evil times. In fact, just this week I heard on the news, you guys have heard the stories about the Christian bakers that wouldn't bake a wedding cake for a homosexual couple. Well, there were some things that went on, and ultimately in the courts, they basically upheld the decision that they should have had to bake the cake. And so Christians' rights are being taken away. If you're living under a rock, you might not know this, but there is political unrest in our country right now. There is racial unrest in our country right now. If you turn on the news, it seems like they're calling evil good and good evil. Isaiah talks about that. I mean, you listen to the news and they're like, hey, this is great, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, that's not great, that's terrible. And then they'll say, and this is terrible, da-da-da. And you're like, wait, that's not terrible, that's great. They're calling good evil and evil good. Statistics are showing that our children are more sexualized than ever. A statistic from this year says that 70% of kids will have sex before they graduate from high school. 70% of kids. A new report says that 45% of American Christians say that God's ultimate goal in their life is to make them happy. A new poll shows that church attendance is at its lowest mark in 20 years. Can you see that everything is backwards right now? And Paul says, make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. 2 Timothy 3 says, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents. Where are my kids for that one? Okay. Ungrateful. Where's my kids? Just kidding. Unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with such people. Guess what, folks? We're living in days like this. Turn on the news. Walk out of your front door. These are the days that we're living in. And you're saying, why is your sermon called Why I'm Optimistic if you're preaching like this? Here's why I'm optimistic. Because make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. The more evil the days get, the more dark the world becomes, the brighter our light should shine. We have more and more opportunities to share Jesus with people because the world is getting darker and darker. And we as a church, as a person, as a believer, you as individuals, we should be burning brighter and brighter in a dark world. So we have the most of every opportunity in these dark days to share Jesus with other people. Man, it's an exciting time to be alive. We have an opportunity to share Jesus with those around us, with our community, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our families. As the days get darker, we get brighter. And church, that's what we need going into 2018. We need to make the most of every opportunity that we have because the days are evil. We need to redeem our time. The evil times that we live in, we need to redeem them. The word redeem actually is a salvation word. It's a word we talk about when we talk about salvation, but originally it was a marketplace word that means to buy back or to use for yourself. And that's what we're to do with the times. Though they might look evil in front of us, we can take them back, redeem them, and use them for the Lord. And so in 2018, first thing we need to do is we need to watch our step. We need to live intentionally. And then as we live intentionally, we need to make the most of every opportunity that comes our way. I don't know about you, but that makes me excited that God wants to use me and He wants to give me opportunities to share the love of Christ with everyone around me. The last thing, and a difficult thing sometimes to understand, is it says this. It says, therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. The last thing we need to do is simply we need to do God's will. Do God's will. You know, you could make $1 million very easily if you could write a book that would convince people of what God's will is for their life. You know that there are so many books. It is the biggest question people ask. What is God's will for my life? What does He want me to do with my... I mean, come on, who's asked that question? You don't have to raise your hand. I've asked it plenty. But like, what does God want me to do with my life? What is His will? And then we're told to do and understand what the Lord's will is. There was a book, I believe it was called Just Do Something. And the author wrote, we should stop thinking about God's will as if it's like a corn maze or a tightrope or a bullseye or a choose-your-own-adventure novel. So many of us, we think of God's will as it's like this maze. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just pray and I'll just sit here and wait till he gives me the light bulb in my head, and then I'll know that that's God's will. We've sat around and prayed, God, just tell me what you want me to do. And sometimes we don't hear it. We're like, I don't know what God's will is, and we get so confused because we look at it this way. But can I tell you that I believe doing God's will is just trusting him in every circumstance and every opportunity and decision that you make. When an opportunity comes your way, you say, okay, God, my decision in this opportunity is I'm going to do this. I'm going to trust you in it. Guess what? Now you're starting to walk in God's will for your life. See, so often we miss the God's will in our immediate life because we're looking so far ahead that we don't see what's right in front of us. And so as we live intentionally, as we watch our step, as we make the most of our opportunities, don't miss them because you think God's will is somewhere out there that you haven't seen it yet, you haven't attained it yet, and you're just going to wait until you see it. Walk in it right now. I could tell you some stories of God's will that sometimes we just don't understand what he's doing, and we don't want to do things because we don't think it's in line with God's will. My pastor growing up used to always say, we need help in the nursery. We need nursery workers. And don't tell me it's not God's will for your life to work in nursery. Because if there's a need and you're following God's will, you'll step into the need whether you feel called to it or not. And I used to be like, oh, that's pretty good. How many of us have ever used that as an excuse? I'm not going to do that. I don't feel like I'm called to that. Or maybe you're not. But there's an opportunity, and you can trust God in the opportunity to move into it. So, Lindsay, we're going to have lots of people signing up for nursery after service today. See my wife if you need to sign up for nursery. But doing God's will is trusting him in those twists and those turns, during the decisions, during the opportunities that are coming in front of you at every moment. So, as we move into this new year of 2018, we are going to watch our steps. We're going to redeem the time that's given to us, and we're going to do the will of God. Can I tell you, if you would do these three things, you would see some amazing things take place in your life. You would see some amazing things take place in your life. And I am so optimistic about 2018. Let me give you the number one reason why I am optimistic moving into 2018. Because in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, Jesus says this. He says, I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Do you realize Jesus wasn't particularly concerned with the Barna research poll that says church is at its all-time low attendance? He's not overly concerned in the Charismatic News article on church growth in America. He's not overly concerned that people thought it was too cold to show up to church this morning, because the gates of hell cannot prevail against the church that he's building. And if we would do his will, if we would follow him, if we would watch our steps, if we would make the most of every opportunity, he can use us in building that church. Because guess what, folks? He's going to build the church with or without us, but I want to be part of it. And so we can be part of that. Man, he's building his church, and the gates of hell can't prevail against it. Man, I'm glad that I'm part of something that's not going to fail. I'm glad I'm part of something that Jesus said is not going to mess up, is not going to fail. Yeah, church isn't always going to be perfect, but it's not going to just be destroyed. It has been battled against for 2,000 years, and nobody can defeat the church because Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I want to try to read something to you that I found this week. Let's pretend a banker phoned you last week, and your banker told you that he had some really good news for you. He told you that there was an anonymous donor that loves you very much, and this donor has decided to deposit 86,400 pennies into your bank account every single morning. 86,400 pennies into your bank account every morning. So that's $864 a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. But he adds there's a stipulation to what's going to happen here. With this $860 odd dollars, the only stipulation is that you have to spend every penny that day. The credit never carries over to the next day. If you don't spend it, it's wasted. You don't get it back. You have to spend that $864 every single day, and that's the only stipulation. So, of course, you have a big smile on your face because you start doing the math, and you're thinking $864 a day turns into about $6,000 a week, and that's about $315,000 a year. You're like, hey, that's a nice little bonus, $315,000 a year. And so you're like, okay, $315,000 a year. I got to spend the $864 every day. I got to be diligent, but I think I can do it. How many of you would be like, yeah, I can figure out how to spend $864 a day? But remember, if you don't spend it, you forfeit it. You don't get it back. Now, that's fun to think of something like that somebody would do that for you, but let's take it out of pretend and put it into reality. There is somebody who loves you very much that every single day deposits 86,400 seconds into your bank of time every day. Of course, 86,400 seconds turns into 1,440 minutes, which of course is 24 hours each day. And there's the same stipulation. You only have those 86,400 seconds each day to live your life, and if you waste them, you don't get them back. And so our loving Father gives us these 86,400 seconds or 86,400 opportunities every single day, and if we don't spend them, they're wasted. But we have an opportunity to spend them. We have an opportunity to do something with the time that He's given us. We have an opportunity to redeem the time that He's given us and do something great with what He's put in our lives, and yet so often we waste them away. I don't know if you're like me, but every once in a while when I take a day off, I lay on the couch till about noon, and I'll look at my wife and I'll be like, man, I feel like I wasted my whole day. And she's like, it's only noon. You can do a lot more. I'm not very productive after noon. But anyway, we waste so much time. And it's good to have rest. I'm not knocking that. We need to sleep. We need rest. But man, so many of us waste away the precious time and minutes that God gives us, and we can never get them back. Once they're wasted, they're forfeited. And we have an opportunity to use that time for God. Someone once said, life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you want to, but you can spend it only once. Life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you want, but you can only spend it once. My question for you, my plea to you moving into 2018 is this: make the most of every opportunity that God gives you this year. The times are evil. Life is not getting longer for any of us. It's getting shorter. I'll be 35 this year. I'm starting to feel old. But man, life is not getting shorter. And you know what? I want to look back on my life one day and say, you know what? I ran the race pretty good, and I ran it pretty hard. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. We are going to get 365 opportunities this year. Make the most of every opportunity that God gives you. Watch where you're walking. Redeem the time. And what was my last point? And do God's will. That's what we have for the new year. I'm excited for what God's going to do in my life. I'm excited for what He's going to do in the church. A lot of exciting things to talk about in 2018, but man, make the most of the opportunities that God gives you, because you're not going to get them back.